Many thanks, Magnus. I remember this time incredibly well, and I feel very privileged that I can stay together here. You, when you were leading the European program of WWF from Switzerland, pulled me into the Arctic, and we had 10 wonderful and very successful years in the Arctic. And I have the privilege here now today to tell you a little bit what happened in the last 20 years. 20 years ago, and I was just a year in Norway to develop the Arctic program for WWF. I was also pulled in to assist in coordinating the WILD10 in Tromsø. And lots of things happened after that. First of all, in that time, it just started that the world was able to look at the Arctic. It was only in 1986 when Gorbachev has brought out the vision that the Arctic region should be a region of cooperation on environment and a region of peace. And it was Finland which had taken that vision seriously and had brought all the environmental ministers together in 1991 to Rovaniemi in Finland, and they launched the Arctic Environmental Protection Strategy, a unique cooperation of the 8 Arctic countries. I had already in 1989 the privilege to come to the northernmost areas of Siberia, leading an expedition to Taimyr, which was in itself, and this picture is actually from the inauguration of the Great Arctic Reserve, which was a follow-up of these expeditions. It's actually taken out of the plane of Prince Philip or his wife when Magnus and myself brought the that time president to the Arctic. And I must say, I have to thank the incredibly inspiring nature of the Arctic itself, and also this bird which brought me to the Arctic, and in the end was the symbol of cooperation between the Siberian Arctic and the Wadden Sea in Western Europe. At that time, in Tromsø at WILD10, just the Great Arctic Reserve establishment has been celebrated. And we heard today from Natasha what a Zapovietnik means. It's a very strict protected area, and the entire north of the northernmost area of Siberia, the Taimyr Peninsula, a lot of the delta areas of rivers, the archipelagos, important for polar bears, for instance, have been protected in a Zapovietnik of the size of about Denmark or Switzerland. And it made that whole area, which is the Taimyr Peninsula, is almost the size of Scandinavia, one of Russia's most protected area. And it set at the beginning of a 10 years golden window in the Russian Arctic, where one nature reserve after the other has been established. A whole set of nature reserves, and some people think that this process then came a little bit to an end after 2000. But we should not think that. There is, I think, golden opportunities also today to congratulate the Russian government, for instance, for the establishment of the new national park around Franz Josef Land, and take also the intentions of the present Russian government seriously to protect their nature. For instance, particularly the Yakutian government did a lot in their huge Republic of Russia to protect, for instance, the Lena Delta and many other protected areas with fascinating nature. But I think that the WILD10 inspired also Norway to a significant step in the very north of Norway on Svalbard. Svalbard is the northernmost place on Earth where one can easily reach to by daily plane connections or by cruise ship, and has all Arctic features something like in a nutshell. And it's in itself an extremely inspiring place where today about 60,000 people, tourists, are come to every year. And it was, in fact, a cooperation between tour companies and conservation NGOs which made a difference there when Norway planned to build a first overland road from Longyearbyen to a coal mine called Svea. When these groups came together, tourism and conservation NGOs, WWF and Naturvernforbundet in Norway, and just produced a little pamphlet and asked people to send a postcard to Gro Harlem Brundtland to stop that road. And the effect of that cooperation was that not only that road was stopped, and I think there also the spirit of the just happened Tromsø Wilderness Congress took a role in it. Norway then decided to run for the goal to make Svalbard, also understood as Spitsbergen, the most the best managed wilderness area in the world. And they created several new national parks and created a system where also the fees which are taken from tourists today are used in a transparent way to manage the different national parks and educate the tourism. So I believe this is one outcome, has also been inspired by the World Wilderness Congress in 1993 in Tromsø. And I would like to bring you a little bit further to look at the Arctic from a perspective which I think could mean that nature needs not only half but even more in that area, and that area is in particular privileged to play a role with significant impact also on other parts of the world. If you look at the Arctic and see there are only 4 million people living there, that is less than what is living in Madrid here, and furthermore that those people are concentrated on certain areas, particularly in Russia. Russia, which anyway forms half of the Arctic, has also most of the population and also many indigenous peoples groups. So this 0.05% of the global population which lives there lives on 15% of the global surface. So it's apart from Antarctica, the least populated and pressured area in the world. When you also further look in particular into the Russian Arctic, where most of these people live, then you see also a certain picture. They are the indigenous people which have choose themselves to live there and should follow up on their traditional lives. But there are many other people which have been brought in the Stalin time to these areas, not only by their own intention, and there is a lot of remains of settlements in the Arctic where people rather would like to move to the south than living there. There is not today a real need and pressure of people living in these areas. Particularly the indigenous people that's their land and their different cultures which one should first see here. It's also Russia where the most economical values are produced. And often, and this is one of our famous maps, one looks at the Arctic from this perspective that many activities are happening there. There's lots of fishery activities, new sea routes with melting ice, oil and gas development, but still one shouldn't be looking only at that and not only at the most polluted places which you also find there, like in Norilsk. And of course one should see the extreme danger that the sea ice is retreating and that less habitat for polar bears, for instance, are remaining. And you have the daily possibility of looking at the sea ice situation. This year it was a little bit less dangerous than last year. And there's a lot of attention, of course, on oil and gas development. But I think one should look particularly on the enormous potential which is still there in order to preserve enormous amount of wilderness which is there. And I think these are the largest wilderness areas in the world. After the Antarctic, we once created this map of the 25 largest wilderness areas and has the potential to serve also inspiring furthermore. You have also, the Arctic is serving also by bringing huge creatures to every other part of the world. This is a huge part of the entire population of the red and moth coming here in huge clouds into the Wadden Sea. Many other wetlands and protected areas in the world are connected to the Arctic biodiversity and the Arctic wilderness today. Just even only that one species is connecting every coastal area in the world to the Arctic. The Arctic is often seen with its key species, the polar bear. The polar bear in itself is also leading back to early cooperation in the Arctic countries. Even in the Soviet times, the polar bear treaty has been developed and led also to a significant increase of the polar bear cooperation. Also, the International Convention for the Regulation of Whales, meanwhile, have led to significant increase of whale species. You see also blue whales now around Svalbard. There is a lot of positive development, and I believe that the Arctic can serve as the area where you can first meet international convention targets such as the CBD targets on protected areas or any other of the IG 2020 targets. And there's particularly the follow-up of the Rovaniemi process when also the Arctic countries established the Arctic Council and still focus on environmental cooperation. And it's the largest region on Earth where intergovernmental cooperation is actually focusing on environmental protection and sustainable development. And the Arctic plays not only a role as a barometer for globally important developments like climate and pollution issues, it has actually a higher potential than any other region on Earth to serve as the best example of intergovernmental cooperation. You have the most powerful countries in the world cooperating here. Norway, for instance, is seen as the most developed countries in the world after the UNDP index. And no other such large region has so much focus on the environment, human pressure and environment diversity of economical interest is lower than anywhere else in the world. Ecosystems and species are also more viewable than in other parts of the world. And you have the highest density of research and monitoring in institutions which work together, delivering high-quality environmental data and information. And you have examples where this cooperation is resulting in something which benefits also the rest of the world. The work of the Arctic countries on pollution issues led to the Stockholm Convention, which is the convention which tries to ban the most dangerous pollutions, the POPs, the persistent organic pollutions from the entire world. I believe, therefore, that the Arctic can serve as the region on Earth where all environmental conventions and their goals and targets can be most easily reached, and that one should focus on looking at the Arctic from that perspective and try to encourage also those cooperation which exist already in that direction. I choose my own ideal for 2052, not only because I will be then 100 years old, but also a former colleague working for WWF, Jürgen Randes, who has written a book about 2052 for the Club of Rome, painted a rather pessimistic picture, and I wonder whether one could also turn it into a more positive one. At least I believe all the CBD and IG targets could be first implemented here, and I think in particular the Arctic can be a region which inspires everyone else in the world to follow good examples. Thank you very much.